Two guests today that need no introduction. Dave Rubin is here with me to start the show off, and then Jack Posobiec. Let me give you places where you can find everybody. Dave Rubin, Rubin Report on X, daverubin.com/events for his Don't Burn This World tour dates in Australia, where he's off very shortly. Rumble, Rubin Report, rubinreport.locals.com, daverubin.tv. And then Posobiec is X, Jack Posobiec, Posobiec, and humanevents.com. There is that is the upcoming tour. I said Melbourne on there. Sydney, Brisbane. Boy, you're going to be busy, Dave. We'll talk to him just right after this. Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say. I'm excited to bring you a new product, a new supplement, Fatty. I take it. I make Susan take it. My whole family takes it. This comes out of, believe it or not, dolphin research. The Navy maintains a fleet of dolphins, and a brilliant veterinarian recognized that these dolphins sometimes developed a syndrome identical to our Alzheimer's disease. Those dolphins were deficient in a particular fatty acid. She replaced the fatty acid, and they didn't get the Alzheimer's. Humans have the same issue, and we are more deficient in this particular fatty acid than ever before. And a simple replacement of this fatty acid called C15 will help us prevent these syndromes. It's published in a recent journal called Metabolites. It's a new nutritional C15, pentadecanoic acid it's called. The deficiency that we are developing for C15 creates something called the cellular fragility syndrome. This is the first nutritional deficiency syndrome to be discovered in 75 years and may be affecting us in many ways, and as many as 1 in 3 of us. This is an important breakthrough. Take advantage of it. Go to fatty15.com/Dr. Drew to receive 15% off a 90-day starter kit subscription, or use code Dr. Drew at checkout for that 15% off, or just go to our website, drdrew.com/fatty15. Let's go right to Dave Rubin, who squeezed us in here during his preparation to leave for Australia. Dave, welcome. He and I did Actual Friends this morning, which airs when and where?
It actually airs on YouTube and Rumble and all those good places, usually on Fridays. But, you know, when we have Dr. Drew on, we might put it up same day because you say so many cutting-edge things that must get out immediately. I leave it to the people behind the scenes.
I suspect, I noticed the way you were reacting to some of the stuff I was saying, and I bet you have some questions about what I was talking about, particularly the Tylenol and that kind of thing. But before we do, I also told you that we now have a YouTube reach. So our international reach is better because YouTube has decided to play fair, essentially. So talk about the Australian trip. Talk about what's coming up.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited. You know, like you, I travel all over the place. I've been to lots of different countries, and I talk to people all over the world. And for Don't Burn This Country, my book right there, my second book, we were supposed to be on tour for the first book in Australia. That got canceled because of COVID. And then we decided not to do an international tour for the second book. But then once a year, I'm trying to do one big trip. And I thought, you know, there was so many strange things emanating out of Australia, particularly during COVID. And then even in the last year or two, as it's pertained to some of these post-October 7th Hamas rallies and all this stuff, I thought, I really want to go there. I feel a real affinity to the people of Australia. They have the American spirit. They want to fight the power. They're fun. They're lively. Obviously, there's a million other reasons geographically and the beaches and all that other cool stuff about Australia, the giant bugs and the kangaroos. But we're going to go and do what I always do, which is have fun with the audience. If you disagree with me in the spirit of Charlie Kirk, you can come up and ask the questions first, and we'll do some live shows and see what happens. You know, it's a long flight though. I'm gonna have to read some Dr. Drew books on the way.
I've done it. I've done it. I recommend the 787 from Boeing for that flight because it's faster and it's so smooth. But There's a website called Australia Wants to Kill You that I love that shows all the animals and bugs that are coming out of Australia. It's fantastic. So and be careful, number one.
Koalas, Drew, the koalas, they have gonorrhea, I think, right?
Chlamydia.
Oh, maybe maybe that wasn't I'm thinking of something else. Scratch that from the record.
Something else, certainly something else in Australia has gonorrhea, but the koala have the chlamydia. But you don't want either of those illnesses, trust me. But the other thing was thinking about, I believe the last time you were in Australia was with Jordan Peterson, was it not?
Yeah, it was actually the last leg of the tour that we did together. It was about 120 stops, 20 countries, and our last day together, it was our only matinee show of the entire tour, and it was at the Sydney Opera House on an absolutely beautiful day. I'm sure you've been there, and we didn't even have security at the time. This is back in 2018. It's hard to believe, but Jordan and I and the tour manager took a walk down that beautiful boardwalk on a gorgeous day, and we had all these people coming up and saying hi, and then to be in that theater, the Sydney Opera House, which is one of the most exquisite buildings I've ever been part of. And I didn't realize until we did the run through before the show that it's a theater in the round, which as a performer is just the greatest thing ever, to have people on every which side of you. And when you're getting laughs, you can feel it. I mean, you could really feel like you're enveloped and surrounded by it. So it was wonderful. I'm psyched. I'm psyched to head back. I appreciate that. So
you're back in that same room when you go to Sydney?
So we're not going to be at the Opera House this time, unless we can pull off something very last minute. Let's see if I'll get my guys cracking on that.
My son actually was music director. He became a lawyer later, but when he was a music director for a musical that toured and was in the Opera House, it was like one of his sentinel moments. It was just an amazing place. So, yeah, I always loved Sydney. When I'm visiting, it was one of the great surprises for me. How lovely a city it is. How great the Australians are there. And so enjoy. Hope people go, and there'll be a lot to do. And it seems like it's in the manner of Charlie Kirk in the sense you want to just engage in discourse with people.
That's it. Charlie and I used to tour together also. I toured with Jordan, but before that I was touring with Charlie, doing a lot of these college events when it was sort of at its nascent thing, before we even called it woke, when it was just a little bit about identity politics, or kind of it was bubbling into the mainstream that there was something weird happening on college campuses. Charlie and I met at a David Horowitz Freedom Center event in West Palm. I was on the left at the time. He was on the right. We kind of hit it off in 5 minutes, and he said, hey, I'm going to go on this tour. How about you're the lib, I'm the conservative, let's talk it out. And we did dozens and dozens of those events. And, even though we were protested often and there were, fire alarms pulled and bomb threats and people threw things at us and all that stuff, it obviously never got to the literally insane point that we got to about 10 days ago. But Charlie really, the best thing that I can say about Charlie, the political pundit, I can say a lot of good things about Charlie the man. He was a good, decent man. And Drew, as you know, when you meet someone in this biz who's the same off camera as they are on camera, that's to me the mark of somebody, because then you really know who they are. But the best thing that I can say about Charlie as the political beast is that Charlie brought me a lot closer to his positions over the years than I brought him to mine. I do think I moved him on a few things, but he really did help my political evolution. I fully credit it for him. I fully credit him for that, and I miss him dearly.
And then Larry Elder pulled you across the goal line.
Exactly. Charlie kind of softened me up, and then I had one instance with Larry Elder about systemic racism, and he just dragged me. And here we are. Now I'm a right-wing maniac like you, my friend. So what can I tell you?
Yeah, I know. I'm not. And so it's such a crazy thing that this whole notion of fascist. I think you're aware I listen to a lot of French radio, and I would listen to a long conversations from journalists today, and they were saying, where this idea of if you're not with me, you're a fascist was invented. It was literally invented by Stalin. That was his strategy. That was his invention. And again, in Russia, they had almost a paranoid preoccupation with fascist because the Germans had destroyed so many millions of Russians. But he just called anyone that didn't agree with him fascist. And it seems like we've entered that phase again.
Oh, yeah. And look, it's not surprising that we're at this spot. That's the thing. Look, the morning that Charlie was assassinated, when at first, we had about an hour window where we heard he was shot. We didn't know he was dead. I felt I was shocked, but not surprised. I was shocked that my friend was shot, and I was certainly shocked at the visuals of it because they were unbelievably jarring, and they'll never leave my brain, and they'll never leave the brain of millions of people across the world. But I wasn't surprised because the rhetoric has been ramped up to this point. As you said when we were chatting this morning, at some point, if you believe that everyone around you is a Nazi and a racist and a fascist and all those things, at some point it's almost incumbent upon you to do something. Now that's a horrific calculus that they've put in the minds of a lot of young people. And, a lot of us have tried to disassemble those bad ideas. The irony of going after Charlie, though, was that there was no one, and I literally mean this, there was no one in American discourse that was reaching out to the other side more than Charlie. So even if you didn't like Charlie's ideas, let's say you were as far left as you could get, and you don't like Charlie's conservative beliefs, he at least was still trying to talk to you. There are plenty of people on the right that were making no effort to talk to you whatsoever. And in some sense, that really was the thing that they feared most with Charlie, because Charlie, he would talk to these guys and then he would disassemble the bad ideas calmly, with great strategy and with thoughtfulness and kindness also. It's pretty rare that Charlie ever got into a real drag-out, knockdown fight with anybody. And that becomes a problem for the people that live in perpetual hysteria. If you have someone calmly disassembling them, that's a bigger problem than just the fight. The fight will go viral no matter what. But if someone really can take your ideas out and expose them for wherever they should be exposed, that's a threat. And I think people understood that about Charlie.
Yeah, I said this morning that if I believe that some terrorist force or fascist force had taken over our government and was stealing our democracy, and Governor Newsom had alerted me to this fact, I'd be in my car driving to Sacramento right now and say, let's go. Let's get something together here. Who's in the Army can help us? Let's get a militia together. We have to do something. We have to do this.
And it would be in some sense your duty as a human to do it if you really believe that true.
As a patriot, as an American.
And that is the sick, twisted reality that these people have put us in. Look, even in the last 48 hours, Gavin Newsom was on Colbert saying that Donald Trump's going to cancel the election. Kamala Harris was on The View talking about how Donald Trump is a fascist. So 10 days after the murder of our friend, they are still doing the exact same thing. And look, there's an opportunity, obviously now, Drew, to bring new people into the fold here. This very strange fold that now includes guys like me and you on the more conservative side. It doesn't really make sense in some way, other than we really love America and love freedom and freedom of speech. But the challenge will be, we can't let everybody come here all at once. And what I mean by that is, you may have seen it was the day after Charlie died. I did not want to do any media, but you get called into these things, and to honor Charlie, I thought I'll do a few. I went on Piers Morgan, and I was on with this guy, Cenk Uygur, who I used to work for the Young Turks, far lefty, and he starts talking about he wants peace and we should all lower the rhetoric. And I said, look, that's nice to hear, but what do you have to say about these 10 YouTube titles that you have about Donald Trump calling him fascist and Hitler? And then I said, what do you think about these other 10 where you're calling Charlie Kirk all those things? And he started screaming and saying, I'm trying to get him killed and I'm a monster. All I was doing was reading his titles back to him. I mention that because we all want to extend the hand. I believe in forgiveness. I believe we've all made mistakes. I include myself in that. I'm certainly not perfect. But we can't welcome everybody aboard unless they're going to acknowledge that they've been part of the toxicity that we are trying to extricate ourselves from. That's going to be the challenge here for us, I think, because obviously a lot of people are going to want to pretend they had nothing to do with this when there's a lot of blame right at their doorstep.
Tim Walz is out saying that he wants to, what do you call it, and tone down the rhetoric or something. And sure, good, Tim, let's do that. But part of the problem, we talked about this morning on Actual Friends, is the asymmetry. This is something that Scott Adams pointed out this morning. The asymmetry in the rhetoric. Yeah. So Trump is boorish and insulting and says, Kamala Harris is a Dumbo. That's essentially what he said. That's not good. It's not rhetorically, it's not fun to be insulted.
Elegant.
On the other side, Yeah, elegant. On the other side, you've got Caleb. You put up some stuff there from a guy off. Was it Twitch? I don't know who. Look at this rhetoric. It's just. But this is the other side.
Not just a guy on Twitch. This is probably one of the top left wing influencers. He has over 3 million followers on Twitch. And I'm going to pull up some of the things that were quotes of what he has said in the past, and actually recent past. Some of this stuff is like, yeah, just kill them, kill those mother effers and murder them in the streets. Let the streets soak in their effing red capitalist blood, dude. He said about property owners who didn't want to rent out homes. He says, stuff like, if you cared about Medicaid, you would kill Rick Scott. Like, he outright says this stuff and doesn't get banned on his pages. And yet, one of the things that I went and looked up, but Drew, you can discuss that, but I also went and searched for the 3 most offensive things that Charlie Kirk ever said, did a deep dive, and I'll show you that in just a second, Drew.
Okay. But this is the problem, this asymmetry. One is actually calling for bloodshed, and the other is insulting and boorish. How do we get people to understand this asymmetry? There's Charlie's nasty.
3
He's
most
also
offensive
not calling
things
for violence.
I was ever able to find on him through multiple years.
But
this is the word. None of it calling for violence.
If you're brainwashed into believing that words are violence and you're threatening my existence, then logically violence is appropriate.
Well, first, let me just address this Twitch guy, this Hasan Piker guy, because I did work with him a little bit. He's actually Cenk, who I just mentioned from the Young Turks. He's his nephew. Hasan is the nephew. I did work with him for a little bit. I mean, I'll just leave it at this. This is not a particularly good person. I will let his words stand on their own. I would ask the people over at Twitch or some of these platforms, is that what your terms of service allows? This is not a First Amendment issue. I would like to know what the platforms allow. I'm completely fine with all of the platforms.
What does the FBI allow?
Well, of course. So there is a First Amendment issue here, right? If you're directly calling for the violence of people, that is one thing. But I'm even going out of my way to, we could put that aside for the moment, assuming the government's not going to come for this guy. The platforms all have a terms of service. A college, when you go to, you have a code of conduct. Those are things that are outside of the First Amendment. And I would say to those, look, I get he's making them a lot of money. As I understand, he makes personally around $200,000 a month on Twitch. So I get it. That means they're making an awful lot of money on him. But at some point, the rubber meets the road. Like, they have to decide what they're willing to put out there. As it pertains to your point about, if you think your life is under attack, you might do some crazy things. I mean, look, this kid, Tyler Robinson, who apparently, came from a fairly nominal, normal household, 2 parents. It sounds like they were roughly conservative, but really got radicalized at college. Then I guess fell in love with the roommate who was transitioning or something to that effect. We'll find out more. If he thought, you have to really try to extrapolate what they were trying to do there. So he thought by killing Charlie Kirk, so he had whatever Charlie Kirk's ideas were that he was confused about, he thought by killing Charlie Kirk that it would lead to a better life for him and his boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever he wanted to call himself, okay? Mm-hmm. But what in essence he did was he killed a human being, so Charlie Kirk's children will no longer have a father and his wife will no longer have a husband. He did that. He in essence ended his own life because he's either going to be put to death, probably not now in light of what Erica Kirk said about forgiveness, but probably spend the rest of his life in jail. And in essence, he's also ended the life of the trans roommate whose life will now be defined by this moment. So even for someone who is on the journey that you talked about, like, my God, I must do something about this irreversible evil. Well, look what the fruits of what you've done are. 3 lives at least are destroyed. It's actually way more than that when you start thinking about family members and children and all those other things.
Yes.
And the rights, the purported rights that you care about are not strengthened in any way. It's not, whatever you thought, whatever ideological or political issue you thought you were stopping by killing Charlie, you've done nothing. If anything, you've actually done the reverse.
You've strengthened it. Yeah, this is, when I really start to think about it, I get just very sad about this whole situation. And I don't know, it's, again, referencing Scott Adams again, he always talks about 2 movies on one screen. Like I think I told you this morning, I was listening to some French radio, and there was the day after the Kirk event in Phoenix, and you and Sage told me how breathtaking it was and how beautiful it was.
Incredible.
And I thought, well, I just listened to a bunch of French journalists say this was absolutely a this was a Hitler staged fascist, and then people started, and the word Christian nationalist all of a sudden was on everyone's lips. I've never heard of that before. I don't even know what that is. Suddenly that's something. They're just making shit up as they go.
Well, Drew, at some point, every kid has heard The Boy Who Cried Wolf. And, I was at the Donald Trump MSG rally. I actually was there with Sage also, and we sat next to each other. So I am sitting with a woman who happens to be black. Nobody cares, but I'm sitting with a black woman being told I'm at a Nazi rally. There's an awful lot of Jews wearing yarmulkes. As a matter of fact, during the rally, I took a picture that went viral because I saw a Jewish man with a yarmulke, and right behind him, I kid you not, you could not have made this up. It sounds like it's from Naked Gun. There was a woman in a burqa at the Trump Nazi rally. That's how profoundly, that's how profoundly insane all of this is. But the point is, we've been through this before. And at some point, those of us that are watching this movie that Scott Adams is referencing have to see what the script is. And the script is, it doesn't matter what you say, they're going to call you these things. So you go to the Trump rally, they call it the biggest Nazi rally ever, even though it was the most joyful celebration of Americana that I could possibly imagine. And then I go to this memorial, which was I've never been part of anything. 100,000 people in the most moving, lovely. I mean, everybody, you could feel it, Drew. I've never been part of something like this. Everybody was a blink away from tears from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. It was just incredible. And that's a Nazi rally too. So at some point you just have to say, okay, look, we don't use violence, so we can't stop these people from saying what they want to say, and they should be able to say it. But we either have to ignore them or figure out other ways to convince people that we are right, which in this case, we really are.
Right. Let's get Larry Elders out there. He seemed to work on you. But there's, this whole phenomenon it's eating itself in that, all these news outlets that are taking these positions, people just look at that and go, oh boy, okay, where were you? Adam Carolla has one question to all these people. Where were you during COVID? How'd you get that so wrong? He just starts there. Then he goes, how'd you get the Steele dossier so wrong? How'd you get the laptop so wrong? How'd you get just you can just go right down the line. Oh, Mr. Journalistic Integrity, only speaking the truth. How did you get everything so damn wrong? And I had a cuss word on my lips, Dave, but I want you to know, after Sage's advice this morning, I did not say it.
Well, I'll give you one that just shows you the audacity of the people that lie about everything. 2 days before the last election, Barack Obama went and gave a stump speech, and he said that Donald Trump said very fine people on both sides at the Charlottesville rally. It's the biggest political hoax of our lifetime, that somehow Donald Trump was saying there's good people and bad people on both sides of white supremacy. No, he was talking about whether statues of people like Robert E. Lee should be up. And there obviously is a debate about that, whether you should keep statues up, maybe you should move them into a museum. Of course, you could have a debate about that. The very next sentence out of his mouth after he said very fine people on both sides, everyone knows this already, was, I'm not talking about the white supremacists or the neo-Nazis who should be condemned completely. Barack Obama, though, went on stage and repeated that lie. So the question when we talk about these two movies that people are watching is, what is it that someone like Barack Obama is thinking? What's the best version? The least cynical version is that Barack Obama has no idea what he's talking about, right? That he just is completely duped by the hoax. Now, that just does not... I can't... Do you think there's any chance of that at this point?
Low. Very low.
Okay, so fine. All right,
because I've had people listen to the tape and go, see, he's just, there it is. And I was like, we just watched the same tape. How can you say that?
Okay, fine. So there's this, so let's say, so very low, very low. So then what is the other version of it? The other version of it, well, then I guess there's two other versions. So there's one that he's just lying, right? There's one that he doesn't know what he's talking about, or there's the one that it really is, which is actually something that Hitler did say, which in effect is, the bigger the lie, the faster it travels, and you can convince an awful lot of people. I'm loosely quoting Hitler on that. But he knew that he could go up there, say something that was completely dishonest, and still convince people. And fortunately, it clearly didn't convince enough people, because we got Trump and not Kamala, so here we are. But that sort of lying and that sort of that's the two movie thing right there. And how much can they get away with in that script? I don't know.
it's decaying. It's certainly decaying, and there's a shrinking business model for that stuff. That's what I see, and the marketplace generally takes care of things, and it'll be interesting to see if it really does here. Jimmy Kimmel will be a test case. He's back on the air, and we'll see if he can get a business going there where he's able to meet his nut. How much he spends every month producing that show.
That poor man might have to take a cut on the $16 million a year he gets to tell half of us that we're racist. Oh my God, he might eventually lose his show and have to open up a YouTube or Rumble account like the rest of us. They go on Eric Swalwell, these clowns. They get up there saying this is an assault on the First Amendment. It has nothing to do with the First Amendment. No one has a right to a TV show. If they did, I would be on network television. I don't want to be on network television. I'm very happy where I am. But it's profoundly absurd. Now, had Donald Trump called the head of Disney and said, fire this guy for the joke, that would be a problem. Of course, the irony is that we know that the Biden administration was calling big tech and silencing people during COVID, and they had no problem when they were silencing millions of us. But, these people never get a mirror. But I suspect that Jimmy Kimmel will be okay one way, or whatever his monthly nut is at $16 million a year. He's had the show for 24 years. He'll be all right.
Yeah, no, he will be, but the show, I just don't think there's a model for late night anymore. I just don't think that the way they produce it, the numbers of, there's just the whole model just doesn't work. They was getting like 240,000 viewers.
Isn't that unfortunate in some sense? Well, meaning that there isn't, we don't have many water cooler things anymore, right? There aren't many things that bring us together. And even binge watching has ruined that. 20-something years ago when The Sopranos was the #1 show, everyone tuned into it on Sunday nights, and then you talked about it with people throughout the week. Now you can binge the entire series, and then we don't ultimately what it does is it just gives us less and less culturally that we can all talk about. So I don't think, it's not that the late night show with the corny monologue and the kind of hacky musicians or whatever. It's not that that's so important, but what would or potentially could be important to America is if we could reincarnate Johnny Carson, and there was a guy that at night largely was liked by most people and was somewhat apolitical and had a nice way of trying to bring us together before you went to bed. Yes, I get it. The internet's different. We're all going to do different things. It won't be the 50 million people watching it the way it was back then. But there would be something healing if we could have that. We just may not have the conditions for it anymore.
Right. I completely agree with you on both fronts, that it would be nice, but I saw Rob Reiner talking to Bill Maher at Club Random about this, and Rob was like, 35 million people every Wednesday would tune into All in the Family, and then we would talk about it the next day. But this whole thing of, I don't know, let's think about it. Maybe you and I can have an effect on it, because these streaming shows are about gathering together and sort of doing stuff. Maybe there are ways to sort of, I don't know, think about it. I'll give it some thought. But listen, you've been very kind with your time. Any last minute? What?
Oh, I just real quick, because I did watch Mar with Rob Reiner, and it's interesting because Rob Reiner, look, All in the Family is a little bit before my time, a little bit, but I watched it over the years. And when he talked about that, there were, I think he said something like 200 million Americans and about 40 million tuned in weekly. Think of the amount of sort of mental, not control, but mental occupancy that took up in the mind of Americans, right? So that is something that's valuable. But I will say this, over the years, when you're a kid and you watch that show, Meathead is the good guy. As I've gotten older, Archie's looking pretty good these days.
Adam brought that up like 5 years ago. He was like, our Meathead is staying there for free. Archie's the one that goes to work every day. He was unemployed and had to lean on a friend to get to work. I mean, and he's footing the bill for the couple living upstairs.
But they're complaining about everything because they know how the world should work.
Yeah. That's right. Really interesting. Dave, any last questions left over from this morning? I think I picked your brain enough and certainly used your time enough.
Well, no, you always, all the gaps that I have when it comes to science and medicine and all these things, you always fill those things nicely. And, we talk quite a bit about the Tylenol situation as it pertains to pregnant women. And, just to see some of the pushback on this and to watch these videos of pregnant women taking Tylenol just to throw it in the face. It's just like there's so many weird things going on. And all we can do is just hope that calmer heads prevail and common sense makes a comeback.
Your mouth to God's ears. Have a great trip in Australia. Can we watch it anywhere or anything? Can we any part of it we can see?
I think one of my guys is going to bring a phone, and they've got it. They have internet there. Yeah, I'm told they have internet, and we're going to see what we can do.
All right. Thank you. See you soon, Dave. Travel safe.
Good to see you, Doc.
You as well. All right. We are going to take a little break. Pay attention. These are all people that we stand behind, and fortunately we have them because they support the program. And I take all these products, everything literally, and everyone around me knows it, whether it's the bone broth or the meat sticks, what I was eating a lot of yesterday, or the fatty or the NR boost. I mean, these are all things that I stand behind. And of course, TWC. I'll tell you about them after a little break. And then Jack Posobiec. I've spent most of my career dealing with illnesses that shorten life, and now we have ways to extend it and extend wellness. I've been working with the team over at V-Shred to develop a product that has everything I want in a longevity supplement. NR Boost has nicotinamide riboside. You know how metal can rust? Well, your body behaves in a similar way. It's mediated through something called NAD. NAD falls as we age, so we're less able to fight off that oxidative process. We oxidize much like that metal. And NAD fights it, but nicotinamide riboside elevates NAD so we can push back on those oxidative stressors, improving health, improving longevity. The other product is Senosync, has fisetin, one of the key molecules to fight off zombie cells, and we've added resveratrol to that, which is a well-known anti-aging antioxidant again. I don't like supplements that have a ton of ingredients. To me, it suggests that none of it's working. When I prescribe a medication, I prescribe that medicine because I expect that to work. That is exactly what I've done with these products. And I want you to go to drdrew.com/vshredmd for 10% off. Again, that is drdrew.com/vshredmd. The wellness company knows that taking charge of your family's healthcare is a top priority, and being rationally ready, and who knows what the future will hold for us. Now, TWC has a service to cover your family's medical needs, including and especially prevention. For just $100 a month, the One Wellness Elite membership includes 2 free medical-grade nutraceuticals per month, free prescriptions for over 800 of the most common medications, access to concierge telemedicine available at a moment's notice, and a 15% discount on all supplements and the emergency kits. 15% off the emergency kits. That's quite a saving. So if you're spending $100 or more on supplements and meds every month, this plan will already save you money. If you sign up for a year, you'll save $200. And when you use the link, drdrew.com/TWC, you'll get 10% off the first payment to the One Wellness Elite membership. Check out One Wellness at drdrew.com/TWC and get 10% off your first payment. drdrew.com/TWC. It's all there.
Ask Dr. Drew.
I have no idea who Dr. Drew is.
He's been watching a lot of Dr. Drew lately.
Dr. Drew.
All right, let's bring in Jack Posobiec. We appreciate, Jack, you being here. There's so much to talk about. You can find Jack, of course. Yeah, I think you guys all. Jack, welcome. This is the first I think we've spoken since your friend was assassinated. How you doing?
Well, thanks again for having me on. It's been I think 2 weeks and a day since then. I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm in the Turning Point Studios. I flew out here basically the first flight I could get. I've just been here ever since, and pretty much going nonstop since that day took place. We had the huge, incredible service on Sunday. Got to speak there, and people keep asking that question, and it's. I guess I don't know. Maybe you would know better. It's one of those things where you have work, you have your normal routine, but everything just seems kind of off, and everything seems kind of tainted or stained or marked in a different way, in a way that I don't know if that's ever going to change. Just it's to use the cliche, I suppose. It's just the new normal that you have to get used to.
Well, I would say there's 2 things probably going on. One is that you're still trying to process what this means. It's different. You're in a different world now. But the other thing is grief. Grief lingers around and percolates and comes in waves and has very strange effects on people. Always the advice is don't neglect it. Pay attention when you feel the grief. Lean into it because it will get you if you don't get it. and use it to make, most people find meaning making is the best way to deal with it. So I'm, as you there at Turning Point, I'm guessing this is you making meaning of your grief.
Well, there's no question. I mean, if I were sitting at home and, staring at the walls or trying to think about what to do, I think I'd be having a much rougher go of it than being here, being in the place that Charlie built with so much support, and his entire life's work was building Turning Point USA, and being able to, again, we had this huge event on Sunday, very, just huge outpouring. I don't even know all the names of the people who came, and the dignitaries, and just the regular folks that waited for, slept out to come into it. And we're doing what we can. And I guess in a way, the thought that I keep coming back to is, as nice as all of this is, it still doesn't make it right. And
oh boy, that's for sure.
It does make it can make it better. You can better your lot. But there's still, and people kept asking, somebody asked me recently, they said, what was it like to speak in front of that many people? And talking about, there's so many people at the event, and spillover, and however many people covered online. And I thought, I didn't feel good about any second of it. I didn't enjoy any second of that, because I didn't want to be there.
Right.
I didn't want any of us to have to be there. We shouldn't have been there. And so, if you want to hold an event like that, you'd hope that you could do so from a place of, success and achievement and love, and not have to do it because we're forced to be there. So, I thought about my family. I thought about, Erica and Charlie's family. My family was there in the front row as well, and Erica was there. And, that's, not like this, I would say is the preeminent thought in my mind.
Has it changed your strategy in terms of how we get people out of their insanity, where they're looking at the event that you were at and start calling it a Christian nationalist takeover or a fascist, event, which is just laughably bizarre.
It's so bizarre. I mean, it's a Christian memorial for a Christian who died. I mean, it's really, it's really as simple as that. That's who Charlie was. That's who his family is. That's what he stood for. And so, these are very common Christian motifs and symbols and themes that are always prevalent whenever any Christian dies, as far as I'm aware. And yes, there was the political as well, because Charlie was a political person and he was killed over politics. There's no question. I would say if there's anything that changes, I think we have to have a real conversation. And that I've been talking about the rise of Marxism in this country, specifically violent Marxism, which is always the sharpest edge of Marxism. And that's exactly what we're encountering now. And, this idea that, we can sit down and talk through our differences is really called into question now, and really called into question with, not everybody, but I think there's a certain sliver of people that I've been warning about for a long time that do not want the dialogue to happen. They want, and it begins with shunning, right? It begins with shunning, and you and I have talked about this. It begins with shunning, then it goes to censorship, then it goes to arrests, lawfare, the power of the state, which was certainly attempted multiple times to shut down Turning Point USA. In fact, a huge FBI investigation that's now starting to become made in the public eye. But when all of that fails, what's left is the kinetic. What's left is the physical, to physically take someone's right to life by killing them. And that's exactly what happened to Charlie. And so I don't think there are any words that you can use to de-radicalize someone like that. I think you just have to throw them behind bars.
Well, you put out a tweet, I think this was yesterday. If you don't mind, I'd like to read it. I think it's what you're talking about right now. It said, "We are now experiencing the largest wave of leftist violence since 2020. It's not only Antifa and BLM rioters, it's targeted killings, and it's going to get worse." Is that your prediction?
Yes. Yeah. So you see the so we just got and by the way, at the time of writing that tweet, I hadn't even received an update. I'd received some information that it was an anti-ICE motivation before they put the photo of the bullets out. And it's actually how they knew so quickly. But we also just found out a few hours ago that, in fact, the shooter at that ICE facility in Dallas, Texas, had searches on his phone for the Charlie Kirk shooting. So this was a copycat. This was someone who was inspired by that act of violence. And we've seen how school shooters and copycats and serial killers have had copycats throughout the years, that this type of activity, unfortunately, breeds and it spreads like a disease, which I talked about in my speech on Sunday. I said, this is a disease and it needs to be stamped out before it spreads. And it is continuing to spread. And what do diseases do? And as a good doctor yourself, you know, when diseases spread, they metastasize and they get worse.
When I was listening to some European radio this morning, I told Dave Rubin this, that they were saying that, you know, this calling everybody a fascist is a strategy that Stalin invented.
Yeah.
He's the first to have done that. If you're not with me, if you don't agree with me, you're a fascist. How something so primitive and bizarre and sort of non-logical is taking place here is so hard to, I never would have predicted.
Well, I think I could say that you can predict it when people use real grievances, and this is what the communist always does. The communist, the Marxist, the way that they gain purchase in any society or any country is by taking real grievances, actual aggrieved parties over typically economics, of course, is the classic. So you talk about in the past, it would be land or property rights of the serfs and the peasants. Today, of course, it would be renters' rights and homeownership rates. But you know, it's really the same thing. It's living conditions. So it's really kind of quite similar to what we saw 100 years ago in Russia. It is the exact same case. And so people come to me and say, well, how could we have this you know, communist running for mayor in New York City? And I say, well, it's because of living conditions. It's just because of living conditions. They do the same thing every single time. This is what they do. And then they take that real grievance and that real issue, and rather than say, okay, let's find a way to make things better for people, they turn around and they do this one step further that you wouldn't see a conservative or sort of a normal politician do, as to say, rather than try to create regulations or try to find some way to, you know, alleviate the situation, they'll say, we need to get rid of the people who have succeeded or who build things, or like Charlie Kirk, go out into the public square and are successful and are a young man, a young entrepreneur with a beautiful family, a wife, who, I've been here with Erica, and she's just incredibly strong through all of this, as the entire world has seen. But they look at someone like a Charlie Kirk or someone like a Donald Trump, or, take your pick. It's very, very bonfire of the vanities, Tom Wolfe kind of situation, where that person must then be demonized. They must be scapegoated to be the blame of all of society. And they rouse the rabble to come up and follow them. This is the communist playbook. It has been the communist playbook for 100 years since Bolshevik Russia. You can go back to the French Revolution and find this as well. This is what they always do, because what they want is that nationwide revolution. And unfortunately, what we're starting to, and CNN asked me about this, just, I think 2 days after Charlie had died. His body wasn't even buried yet. He just, I don't even know if he had made it back to Arizona at this point, but they asked me, and we were sitting just over here in this building, and they said, are we in a civil war? And I said, my friend's in a box, and he didn't get there by accident. And we are facing asymmetric civil warfare. I hate the fact that I predicted this. I hate the fact that I don't want to be right about any of this. I don't want to be living through any of this. I told my wife, I said, I think this is what I wanted to do for a living, and sit in front of cameras and talk about this stuff all the time. But how can you not? How can you not when you see what's going on in the world, when your friend gets taken out, and it's the exact symptoms of a corrupt corruption in our society that unfortunately we don't seem to be quite ready to face yet. We treat it as just, oh, that was just a bad egg. That was just a bad egg. And I say, no, there are social pressures and social forces that are leading to this corruption. And unfortunately, they are exacerbating it. So when you look at the wave of violence that we've seen, the ABC shooting, the attempted bombing of a Fox News van, the shooting at the Catholic school in Minneapolis, the shooting of Charlie Kirk, this ICE shooting yesterday, all of those in the last couple of weeks, we're living through bloody September right now. And unfortunately, it is going to escalate and it is going to get worse.
And how do we manage it? What's the strategy? Because I was saying, the guys like Newsom, if he had alerted me to the fact that some foreign force had taken over the government and they were going to steal everything that he's saying, I would be in my car on the way to Sacramento. Like, let's go. Let's get something together here. Let's somebody in the army, or can we get a militia going? What are we going to do? We got to take it back. That's the level of the rhetoric right now. That if you're a patriot, how could you think otherwise? If you believe what they're telling you?
Well, and Bill Maher last night, on the show that just came out last night, said we're not going to have elections anymore. He said he doesn't believe that Donald Trump will allow there to be another election that's not rigged, and basically it'll be the end of elections, the end of democracy, and so the same type of rhetoric is still going. Look, the issue here is that all of the pressure is only being applied in one direction. So the bullets are flying in one direction. The rhetoric is flying in one direction. The arrests that took place over all 4 years, the state power was only in one direction. People like Peter Navarro, people like Steve Bannon were jailed. Donald Trump was almost assassinated twice. His assassin was a far left guy, was just found guilty on all counts earlier this week. He attempted to commit suicide in the courtroom while using a pen, just completely radicalized individual. And so I look at the GOP politicians in DC and they put out strongly worded tweets, or they'll get up and beat their chest and say, why won't you guys just stop? As if that's going to change the situation. And it's really not. If you're dealing with a hardened radical, the only thing, it's like my kids, right? At some point, you got to put them on timeout when they're acting out. You got to put them on timeout. The gentle parenting has failed. It's failed, okay? We can't do the gentle parenting anymore. We got to go back to the real parenting.
But what does that look like? How does that, become a strategy per se?
Sure. So we call it the iron law of exact reciprocity. And so if they jail our guys, then we've got to look at crimes that were committed by those individuals, James Comey being one of them, who hopefully will be indicted very soon here. I hear John Brennan is another one that's going to face indictment. That's fantastic, because you can't have one side of the government demonizing the other, arresting the other, placing them in shackles, and then just getting away with it. If you just let them get away with it, again, like a child, then, or just tell them that they were naughty, but don't actually give them any repercussions, then they'll do it again, because you're enabling the behavior over and over. They will do it to JD Vance. They will do it to whoever else it might be in the future. They would, Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, doesn't matter, Tulsi Gabbard. They'll continue to do these actions. Then you take the organizations, whether it be George Soros, whether it be any of these far left money groups that's paying the affinity groups of Antifa and others. I like the designation as a terrorist organization. I would actually argue they should be designated as a foreign terrorist organization. Antifa has cells all over Europe, but it's actually a phenomenon that originated in Europe and continues in Western Europe to this day. Germany, France, England, Italy, and Spain. And clearly meets all of the characteristics of a foreign terrorist organization that operates in our soil and on theirs. And so if you do that, then it enables the State Department and the Treasury Department to be able to go after any funding sources, or, by the way, anyone involved in a conspiracy with those people to break the law, to enact riots. Funny enough, believe it or not, I was talking to a lawyer about this, who's also a legal scholar, and they were telling me that the RICO law, as it stands, actually does not include as one of the predicate acts for RICO, because it was originally designed for the mafia. So one of the crimes that's not included in the RICO Act is rioting. Rioting is not included in the RICO Act. I had no idea. So that's a clear legislative fix that can be passed by Congress tomorrow. so that the RICO Act to be used to anyone fomenting riots, and then to the actual armed groups themselves. You need legal power, you need disruption efforts, you need to go after the funding sources and go after the individuals themselves that are involved in any of these localized domestic terrorist groups, Socialist Rifle Alliance, the John Brown gun clubs, this Armed Queers Salt Lake City, which seemed to have some kind of advanced knowledge of Charlie's assassination. They were certainly talking about it online quite a bit. They need to be investigated, and we're just not seeing that level of activity yet.
Oh, really? I thought they were getting at that. That's interesting. But you've mentioned a couple times 1789 France. And, the one thing that teaches us is that within 5 years, everybody's on the guillotine. Whoever puts somebody on the guillotine, they're on the guillotine. Then everybody is there. The terror ensues.
It's so, the Ouroboros,
this tit for tat.
Eating its own tail.
Yes. Yes. And so that's what concerns me about the tit for tat, that it just escalates this snake eating its own tail.
Well, and this is why, I would say the left is the Ouroboros here. When I say the iron law of exact reciprocity, that's why it's reciprocal, not reactionary. Because reactionary would be, okay, we're going to go after everyone with a D next to their name. I'm not saying that. I'm saying people who cross that line, who broach the line from civil discourse to violence, from civil discourse to denying someone's right to exist. Once you cross that line, now you've become completely antisocial at this point. And this is why the killer of Charlie Kirk is facing the death penalty now, because what he did is so heinous that it's in fact a crime. It is a crime against our entire society, not just a crime against Charlie and Erica and the children and everything that they've been robbed of. But this idea that we have civil discourse in this nation and the ability to go and debate things, by the way, on a college campus. What better venue to hash out these great questions of our time, whatever it may be, DEI or CRT or whatever the debate is of the day. Let's bring it all to the forefront and have it out in a civil manner. This is the central pillar of Western society. It really is. And when you attack that in such a cold-blooded and horrific manner, you are attacking that civil pillar in addition to, of course, attacking Charlie directly. And that's the type of rhetoric. And by the way, that doesn't, only include people like on one side of the political aisle. It's just that that's where we seem to be seeing it from at this point. You need, as a country, to stand against it. And so you need to stand against political violence. And I don't just mean writing letters and petitions. I mean, draw a firm line in the sand backed by full government action at the state and federal level.
Back to the psychology of grievance. You mentioned that. And the one thing I've seen is that when you have a predominance of narcissism or cluster B, what we call personality disorders, that's when you see mobs, that's when you see scapegoating. And I've been saying it for like 10 years. I didn't know that cancellation would be the modern scapegoating, but that's now 5 or 6 years old. Now we're moving into more bloodshed scapegoating, which is usually where scapegoating goes, though usually there's some sort of catharsis afterwards, though this doesn't seem to have happened. The underlying psychology of the grievance really is one of two things: resentment or envy. And we have to start calling out, look at every religious injunction against envy. It's always there because envy is so destructive. And resentment just eats people up and it makes them do something, but envy makes them have to destroy somebody else. Any thoughts about how we do better with the psychology?
Well, I think we do need to do better. And one of the things, so I noticed this with, you talk about the narcissistic personality types. And one of the tactics that I've seen be employed over and over in the wake of this is DARVO, the DARVO tactic from many in the media. I would even include Jimmy Kimmel in this, by the way, where so DARVO is a typical narcissistic tactic: deny, attack, and then reverse victim and offender. And so the very first thing he did was deny that Charlie Kirk's attacker was one of Charlie's political opponents, even though he obviously was. He told us his motive very clearly. Then you attack by criticizing Charlie, and then also, by the way, criticizing people on Charlie's side of the aisle, my side of the aisle. And then you reverse victim and offender by Kimmel then painting himself as he's some kind of martyr, as really saying, well, Charlie and those guys, we know what they're about. They're fighting this. They're waging a culture war. So, they maybe they had it coming, and making all of these excuses, and then the refusal to apologize in any way when he returned from his brief vacation from his show, or correct the lie. And so this is really what's simple here. It's about holding people accountable for their lies. And so many of those lies, which, by the way, turn into the scapegoating. And that's why it needs to be pointed out, at least for those of us with a platform, myself. That's why I've been so vocal about this. It's because those lies only enable more and more scapegoating. Even Barack Obama, who by all accounts is the leader of, or at least public leader of the Democrat Party, he said, I feel bad for Charlie. But, Charlie said a lot of bad things. And he lists this, does this litany of the bads, this, or what do they call it? A list of horribles. It used to be called in the French Revolution, the list of his thought crimes, and puts this litany out there. And so I'm thinking, well, wait, if you really did feel bad, why do you have to include all of this stuff that you would disagree with? He talks about conservative political statements that Charlie has made. And again, it reinforces the behavior, reinforces the shunning, the ostracism of family members. Although I will, and that's what needs to be called out. Although I will tell you, Dr. Drew, I did have a liberal family member reach out to me in the wake of my friend's murder for the first time in years. And I'm not going to name names, but I did see a little sliver of a breakthrough there.
Nice. Well, hopefully there's some momentum that picks up. I was hopeful during the Phoenix ceremony, and then the next day I saw people were discussing it. I was like, oh boy, it's just wild. I have to say, I'm not convinced what you're calling lies are lies. I think people are actually delusional. I've been saying that since COVID too. I think there's an actual delusional distortion.
Valid.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. It is. There is an interesting, and I've come across this as well. It's an interesting distinction to try to figure out who is doing it deliberately and who actually believes it.
Right, exactly. And what is their reasoning to believe something that is clearly not reflective of reality? That's, again, I was during COVID, I'm like, what's going on here? How do we become so hysterical? Well, we're still doing it.
It's the cognitive dissonance.
It's cognitive dissonance, and it's mass formation. It's mass formation. And then once you're in it, you have cognitive dissonance when you try to get out, so you stay in it. Right. And it's
because
very, very powerful.
To admit or to allow yourself to think that you have been, and there's that subconscious feeling that, that subtle, just thought at the back of your mind. It isn't even a thought, it's a pre-thought. That sense that could it be possible that I was wrong about all of this? And then the cognitive dissonance hits in to squash it down as hard as possible.
Exactly. Because there's a whole cascade of considerations on the heels of what you believed. Who was the person you trust that got you to that person? Why all your friends around you reinforce this same thing? What is my worldview after all this? And so it is very hard. Sometimes you can convince people in narrow areas and then they double down in others. So hopefully we can get to a place where reality reasserts itself. That's what I'm looking for. Jack, I appreciate you being here. Where do you want people to find you?
You can follow me, of course, at Human Events Daily. That's our podcast. We're up on Apple. We're up on Spotify. And we have been here at the Turning Point USA headquarters, the Charlie Kirk studio, since the murder of my dear friend. And we're just doing what we can out here, and really appreciate everyone's support. Everyone who's reached out to us, who's reached out to me personally, continue to support the show, because we're not going to let his sacrifice be in vain. No, absolutely not.
Jack, thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Drew.
Cheers. All right. Thank you for being here, everybody. Interesting, great guests, great week. Emily Barsh, thank you for booking these, particularly in the last minute. We got right to it today. Caleb, anything on your, that you walk away with from this episode?
No, nothing big. I actually wasn't super familiar with what Hasan has been saying on Twitch, and that this is kind of the leader of anyone who's like under 35, these young adults are watching this guy. And some of these things, I'm like, even if I go and look for the context, it's still horrible. And I dug as deep as I could. I was like, there's gotta be some quote from Charlie Kirk that at least slightly mirrors what this guy's saying. And there's nothing, there's no calls to violence. And this guy's like saying, let the capitalist blood spill out into the streets. Like, he's saying this on Twitch with 3 million followers. That's bizarre. And of course, I don't want his rights taken away. I want him to be able to say what he wants. But I'm shocked that Amazon allows that on their platform that they own, and allow him to just continue saying this stuff with what it seems like very little or no punishment.
I think that's what Mark Mitchell, the Rasmussen pollster, was talking about. It was this group. He did not mention this guy by name. He was worried about Reddit, but this is what had him very upset. If you remember, he was optimistic, but he was concerned about this. All right, coming up, we this is my indulgent day. We're going to go early at 12:30 to talk to a Frenchman who's Andrei Burkhoff, who's a journalist over there. Jeff Dye, I think, is coming in. I saw somewhere. Jessica Rhodes, Joe Latipo, the First Lady from Florida. A lot coming up here. Navarro coming back in. Viva Fry with him. We're going to have a full TWC day on the 16th with Gary Brecka. So be sure to get that. And just a reminder on TWC, I neglected to call your attention to the One Wellness, a reminder that they have 3 different tiers, the Select, Premier, and Elite, and each are different solutions, economic solutions, to try to help you get free of the medical system and also to save money on wellness products if that's what you want. Again, you can get that all at drdrew.com/TWC, as well as I believe you can get discounts. Hold on. 10% off, yes, at checkout if you use Drew at checkout. And I'm very pleased with TWC. We got more stuff coming from those guys, so stay tuned. What's that, Caleb?
Very, very useful. I had another great use for it whenever I had that 24-hour, which for me, Crohn's, it's a 48-hour bug. I think it was norovirus or something. Really severe nausea. And it saved me the hour of shitting on the phone with the doctor, the hour waiting there, being sick, driving there, going to the prescription. It was right there waiting for me. Is it Zofran, I think, is the brand name of whatever they have?
Yes, we have
very
Zofran.
Useful.
And here's what makes me insane.
So useful whenever you're sick and don't want to leave the house.
It's a very safe medication. You should have it right away because that's when you're suffering. And, Caleb, you're such a maniac. You can't figure out how to use a medication that is safe and affects nausea. It's impossible for you to figure it out without somebody with advanced degrees to hold your hand as you use it. I'm very, I don't want to go too far with this notion, but I want to just point out we need to get things in the hands of patients and trust patients to do the proper care that they are quite capable of doing. We have lots of guidance. We have lots of telehealth backup. So it's not completely on your own. If you have any questions, we're there. All right. So have a good weekend, everybody. And as I said, we are early next week for Andrei Burkhoff and Jeff Dye. We will see you then on Tuesday at 12:30. Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.